Kamigawa Neon Dynasty spoiler season has started early. Today we got a whole batch of crazy new stuff to talk about. Vehicles that can be your commander, and my most favorite thing, another Phyrexian Praetor that comes in Phyrexian text.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered to talk about Kamigawa spoiler goodness. Now, before we do this, just want to let you know I am super excited. The second installment of the Brothers War lore has just released today. And the story is absolutely amazing. So, it's up on Fantasy Geographic. Go ahead and check it out after you're done here. And tonight, I have another treat. We're going to be doing Innistrad double feature Plinko. So come on by the live stream for some of that fun. Now, let's dive into the Kamigawa spoilers. Let me put the thing I'm most hyped for up on the screen for you, my friends. This is Jin-Gitaxias, the blue Phyrexian Praetor, the one that is obsessed with knowledge and seeking perfection, right? So we have this scenario where we got to see Vorinclex over on Kaldheim. Now all of a sudden we're seeing another Praetor, but this time it's in the world of Kamigawa. So what's going on? What's the deal? It appears that Tezzeret may be basically planeswalking these Phyrexians around to different planes of existence. But ultimately, what is his goal? Tezzeret really does feel like a great match for the Phyrexians, considering that he is an amalgam of metal and flesh. And if you're not really familiar with the Phyrexians, the Brothers War lore that we're doing over on Fantasy Geographic literally covers like the rise of Phyrexia and Urza versus Mishra and all that good stuff. So again, check that awesomeness out. Now, unfortunately, because we only have the Phyrexian text for this, there's not a lot known about this card yet. You can clearly see the huge casting cost on it. You can see that it is a 5/5, but ultimately, that's all the information we have. So that's really like a tasty little hype beast sort of moment. I definitely want to know what the powers of this card are and what they are all about. Now, we have a number of other cards that got spoiled through commander decks, and then another card to talk about as well. So, from the commander decks, let's start talking about the vehicle concept one, all right? And that is basically led by Kotari, the Pilot Prodigy. So, 1 blue, 1 and 1 generic gets you, 1 blue, 1 white and 1 gets you a 2/4 legendary Moonfolk Pilot with the ability vehicles you control have crew 2, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, target artifact creature you control gains lifelink and vigilance until end of turn. The flavor text says, some people test limits, I prefer to demolish them. Conceptually, this actually isn't a bad idea for a pilot when it comes to vehicles, right? The idea that this is a 2/4 combined with the fact that vehicles you control have crew 2, that means that this person is such a prodigy that not only can they drive any vehicle, that's the concept underlying this, right? The whole idea is, look, you can go ahead and crew anybody with this. But on top of that, Kotari can actually extend their knowledge of vehicle mastery to any of your other creatures, because it makes it so all of your vehicles can be crewed by just 2. So that is an insane level of expertise, and it makes sense that that would basically be the reserve of a Moonfolk, right? Because they are masters of knowledge. So overall, that works. Now, when we flip over the commander box, we actually get a taste of the flavor as well as some of the cards, right? So it says, driven to win. Choose your commander and overcome both foe and friend in this fun and exciting multiplayer Magic format. Hitch a ride with Kotari and her fleet of souped-up vehicles. I did a video on souping up your deck. People got upset because it was me throwing a Magic deck in soup. But hey, what are you going to do? So, it says, run your opponents off the road. If you can master all the ways to bring your artifacts to life, you'll be miles ahead of the competition. And right here in the middle of this, Shorakai Genesis Engine. This thing is wild, this concept. So it's 1 blue, 1 white, and 2 for an 8/8 legendary vehicle, okay? It's got an ability, pay 1 and tap it, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token with this creature crews vehicles as though its power were 2 or greater. And this thing has a crew of 8. So if you actually want to get it up and running, you have to crew with it, which is a little bit weird because clearly they're going for a mech concept here. And mechs tend to be piloted by one person. And they don't have to be so hulking that they're like an ultimate titan giant, I should say. So you got this kind of a scenario, you go, wait a minute, like, you should be able to crew this with just one guy. And you can if you have Katori, right? Katori can pilot this all by themselves. I guess maybe the 8 crews, you need people in the arms and legs to work it like Voltron or something? I don't know. But this is a funky concept for a card. And the final line on it where it says, it can be your commander is really crazy to me. This is the only vehicle that you can use as your commander. And it opens up the door to an entirely new concept of deck. Now there's 2 cards in the background. One is easier to make out what it does. You've got Organic Extinction, which is probably something along the lines of either 2 white or 3 white and 8, it looks like. It's got a huge casting cost, but it has Improvise, which lets you tap artifacts to reduce its casting cost by 1 generic for every artifact that you tap. And it says destroy all non-artifact creatures. So the idea is this just wipes out all non-artifact life. We've seen this concept before actually on Mirrodin. So this is nothing new overall. And then on the other side, we have a legendary creature called the Animator. This one is like the hardest to figure out what it does because it just says until end of turn, target non-creature you control becomes an artifact. It looks like what it does is it turns one of your non-creature artifacts into an artifact creature. If it's a vehicle, it turns it into a 1/1. But then it also has an ability that lets you put counters on permanents, and that it's really unclear what that is. But below it, it says Katori Pilot Prodigy. From a young age, Katori displayed an uncanny talent for piloting. She was selected to test an experimental mech that had been fused with a spirit, leading to a strong friendship between Katori and the spirit of the mech. When the project was scrapped, Katori and her mech went on the run, determined to stay one step ahead of the authorities. I personally am not a big fan of this kind of technology in Magic the Gathering, but on the other side of the coin, I actually really do like the concept of a mech that's been infused with like spirit energy and it bonds with somebody and the project that they're a part of gets closed down, but this person's connected to their mech. So like, we're going. It makes the mech almost into a living being, right? So that is pretty cool. I do like that. Now, let's take a look at the other commander deck. The lead card for this one is Chisiro the Shattered Blade. So that's 1 green, 1 red, and 2 for a 4/4 legendary snake samurai. Whenever an aura or equipment enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 red spirit creature token with menace. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each modified creature you control. And if you didn't know what modified meant, it's any creature that has equipment, has an aura on it, or has a counter on it counts as modified. Now, this is a very weird beast, right? Because this is clearly a samurai, and then you have a samurai who's focused on like auras and equipments, who somehow creates spirit tokens as a result, and then also is able to like boost up your guys who are modified. It's really weird trying to puzzle together exactly what the flavor of this is supposed to be. It's not quite clear. It looks like a bunch of disparate abilities kind of slapped together, but it makes for a decent package. Every time you have a aura equipment come out, you get a 2/2, and they don't have to be cast from your hand, right? They can come from anywhere to get you that 2/2. And the fact that he will keep growing your modified creatures is great, because if you're using, let's say, for example, you're using equipment to make your creatures be considered modified. Well, he's going to put a +1/+1 counter on them at the end of turn. So now every creature that was modified by equipment will have a counter on it and will still count as modified, and you can move the equipment around, thus making each of your creatures 1 by 1 modified, and once they get a counter on them, they count as modified, and then the counters just keep stacking up turn after turn after turn. So it seems like a pretty solid package overall. Now, on the flip side of the box, it says power up. Choose your commander over... Oh, this is the exact... Let's skip that part. Okay, so going straight to the cards. We've got Kaima the Fractured Calm. That is a cool name for a spirit that represents the concept of Fractured Calm. So, 4 mana, 1 green, 1 red, and 2 get you a 3/3 legendary spirit. At the beginning of your end step, goad each creature your opponents control that's enchanted by an aura you control. put a +1/+1 counter on Kaima, the Fractured Calm, for every creature that was goaded this way. So goading basically just says your opponent's creature has to attack, and it has to attack someone other than you if possible. So it's interesting that you can slap enchantments on. My first thought when I saw this was, wow, this would go great with things like pacifism style enchantments, where you just go, I'm going to put this enchantment on your creature so it can't attack or block. It gets goaded, and then Kaima gets these bonuses, but your creatures over there are no threat to me. But this is a red-green deck, and if you played this as your commander in a red-green deck, you'd have no ability to use those enchantments. So I guess the idea is you put like enchantments on your opponent's creatures that beef them up, but then they can only swing on your opponents with them, and your guy gets bigger. It's definitely an interesting twist. Now, the cards behind it, on one side we have Aki Battle Squad. That looks to me like it costs 7 mana. So I'm guessing it costs 2 red and 5, although it might be 1 red and 5. And it says it's a Goblin Samurai. Whenever you, whenever one or more modified creatures you control attack, you get to untap all your modified creatures, and you get an extra attack phase at the end, like after this combat. But the ability only triggers once a turn. This is pretty wild. I mean, if you have Chishiro and you have all your guys modified, this is just going to get really, really dumb. But the really interesting one to me is the Penitent Warlord here. So it's 2 green and 1 for a 0/5. It is an Ogre Samurai, and basically, when it attacks, or I think, what does it say? Whenever this deals combat damage to an opponent, you draw, I'm guessing it says you draw that many cards, and this deals damage equal to that to each other creature you control. That's my guess, because he's called the Penitent Warlord, and he's got a power of 0. So it kind of gives me the idea of a warlord who isn't really keen on being engaged in battle anymore, and so if you force him into it, then you will suffer. Like, he basically gains knowledge from the experience, but at the same time, he ends up suffering as a result. And it's like, I have an eye for an eye kind of concept where I did all this damage over here, so now I'm going to do this damage to our side. Now understand, that's totally just a theory, missing a bunch of words off of the card. That's just what it feels like to me. So if you have a different idea about it, by all means, let me know in the comments below. Now, hold on, let me read the little Chishiro the Shattered Blade. When Chishiro's troops were ambushed, he lost everything: his friends, his blade, and his bond with his kami. Now he travels the land in search of the scattered pieces of his broken blade. As he helps people along the way, he feels his connection to the world and his old kami begin to heal. Oh, that's all right. You know, the world changed. The kami's connection to things was fractured, and now you've got to establish a new bond. That's similar to the dragons changing when we talked about the 5 different dragons in a previous video, how they morphed into these new dragons after 50 years of waiting at the base of Boseiju. Now let us talk about a crazy Toad Rider. This is amazing. This is Tatsunari the Toad Rider. 1 black and 2 for a 3/3 legendary human ninja Toad Rider. I love it. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, if you don't control a creature named Kemi, create Kemi, a legendary 3/3 black and green frog creature token with, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And then has the additional ability, pay 1 green-blue hybrid, so you can pay either a green or a blue. A green or a blue and 1. Tatsunari Toad Rider and target frog you control can't be blocked this turn except by creatures with flying or reach. This is a super flavorful card. A ninja that is a Toad Rider is a fun concept straight out of the gate. Not everything in this new world of Kamigawa is all high tech, so somebody just hopping along on a toad is a really fun concept. The idea that enchantment magic draws this toad out, like he almost feeds on it, right? Because when you cast an enchantment, then Kemi shows up. He's like, hey, what you doing? You enchanting stuff? I like this. It tastes good. And basically from that point onwards, whenever you cast an enchantment, you gain life from that, and your opponent loses life. So this is a frog that somehow like feeds on and focuses enchantment magic. And then the other ability, the unblockable ability is really neat as well, because you can't use it unless you have the frog. You might have thought when you read that, oh, 2 mana, I can make this guy unblockable. No, that's not the case. You can only do that if you can meet the requirements for the target. And you have to target a frog with this. So if you don't have the token or a shapeshifter or something that counts, you literally can't activate the ability. And it's an interesting way to create a legendary creature that actually has a 3-color identity by slapping this ability on the end. I absolutely think this is a fascinating card. I would love to see the artwork in better resolution. That's one of the things I really don't like about these early access style leaks, but what are you gonna do, right? Anyhow, to reiterate, my friends, we're gonna open some double feature in the stream tonight. We're gonna do a Plinko style, and more importantly, the newest Brothers War lore video has premiered. You owe it to yourself to watch it because the story is absolutely fantastic. If you like Magic the Gathering and you don't know the Brothers War story, you're literally missing out on the best storyline in Magic's history. So I'll put links up on the screen for you, my friends, and I'll see you over there.